Okay, and we're live. Happy 2020, everybody. Hopefully, this year you'll all have clear visions of what you're gonna do because it's 2020. hmm We're back. It's been a while, and yeah, we were just talking about Karen's like halo glow thing on her webcam. It's amazing.
Well,
It's great. This is it's like so artsy. Like even like if you move your hand, it even like tracks your hand. Whoa!
yeah, look, there's a little halo.
I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what setting I put it on. It just popped up like this.
It's amazing. But before we start the book club, how is everybody doing? I mean, the two of you guys are like back at school, craziness. Yeah,
Just a
yeah,
little tired is all.
yeah. Offline, we were just talking with Amanda about her crazy musical stuff, and yeah. Oh, you guys are? Do you guys both have to deal with end of term for January at all? Like, is it report card season?
Oh no, card season was December, and then
Yeah.
it'll be March.
Oh,
We
okay.
do 3 terms.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because when does your term end? Like, I only have about 5 weeks until my report cards have to be in. Like, from now.
So
And that's
your report cards are in what, like end of February?
so,
Mid-February?
so
Yeah.
technically, term one ends in the middle of December, but you don't start anything really until January because the Christmas break is coming up. So you kind of lose 2 weeks in term two.
Yeah.
And then report cards are usually sent out right before spring break, but you have to have your marks in like a week or two before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like so much work. Yeah, Karen, how have you been? Anything crazy happening at school right now?
Nothing crazy at school, but
What?
over the holidays I got engaged.
So
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank you. So we're looking at getting married at the March spring break.
Oh my god, that's so rude.
That's amazing.
Because why waste any time?
That is true. Are you gonna take his last name?
I'm gonna take his last name. Yep.
Okay.
Ooh. I mean, like, I guess March break doesn't give you enough, like, a lot of time to like grow your hair long, but
That's long enough.
long enough. No, I was talking to some of my other friends, and they're like, yeah, like you get engaged and you start growing your hair long. I was like, that's a thing. They're like, yeah, you can style it differently. I was like, but don't you have to like in the end put in extensions anyways because your hair's not full, right? So I was like, is there any point? Yeah.
Did you do extensions, Amanda?
I had to. I grew it out, but then we trimmed a little bit off to get out split ends, and then we ended up just getting extensions anyway. Because after you curl it and you do all that stuff, it's not long enough to. As long as it is naturally, it's not long enough. So yeah, I still have a few chunks of hair upstairs.
Yeah, I'm gonna work with what I've got. If I can do the hairstyle that I want, then great. And if I can't, yeah, I'll find someone that will do something for me.
You can just do an updo. That's just the easiest.
Yeah, I don't need to have like ringlets galore.
Are you guys planning to do like a very simple like kind of ceremony reception kind of thing?
Yeah, we're thinking pretty small, like 40 people.
That's
nice and intimate. That's intimate. It's nice. Yeah.
The idea was we'll do the small ceremony really quick, and then in the summertime do like a big party with like
that'll be fun.
All the friends, and so like that's when I would invite you guys.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to keep it small for now, and then have a big bash in the summer.
Let's see the ring.
Oh, the ring. I don't know if you can see it.
We can see it. Yeah.
Ooh, very pretty.
Ooh.
Is it focusing? No.
It's
really trying. Come on. Okay.
The camera does not like the ring.
It's a ruby.
Okay.
That's
better. Yeah.
I like that it's low set.
Yeah.
Settings low.
Yeah.
Like super high.
It's not ridiculously high, but it's ruby because it's my birthstone, and because I like red is passionate love, and it's different. I just like slightly different.
Mm-hmm. Well, like people always get like diamonds, right? So it's like it's kind of like a nice break from tradition. Did any of your students notice? And they're like, ah!
Well, they didn't notice, but a lot of the teachers were like, ask Miss Penhall what happened to her over the break. The grade 4-5s are excited, and they're starting to like threaten me. They're like, Miss Penhall, we're gonna show up at your wedding, and I'm like, no. No.
That's sweet though. That is
sweet. Very cute. And then one suggested that we just like stage the whole thing and redo it for the whole school in the gym.
You should go do that. Yes, you should do that.
No.
I am all for that idea.
This is the opposite of intimate.
Yeah, the opposite. Okay. With my 350 closest friends that are under 10.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I mean, congratulations. That's exciting. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So some of the things I've changed, I don't know if I told both of you guys, but I stepped away from my studio at the end of the year. So I'm no longer at my parents' place. And that's why I bought that piano for the second room.
Okay.
So I'll be teaching a couple of my students here and doing house calls for the rest of them. I'm also back in school. So there's a bunch of stuff. So like I'm taking classes at Camosun for public administration. Nice. So just hopefully landing a government job because, I'm 33 and I want health insurance. So, those benefits, the things that I hated growing up now, I'm just like, oh, I wish I had been smart and jumped into it early, but.
Yeah.
But I was really lucky because there was someone who was moving and they're like, oh, hey, we bought this piano from Tom Lee. It was very expensive, but no one plays it. I was like, oh, I'll buy it off of you. You want to get rid of it anyway. So got a pretty good deal on it. Awesome. And it sounds pretty good. I am a little bit worried because I don't have a carpet underneath yet or a rug. So I'm worried if the sound will travel from the wall down. Yeah. So I'm going to see if I can get some type of preliminary sound muffling. I'm going to put some stuff in the back and then get a rug and then hopefully that'll be good enough. But I'm only teaching 2 days here. So hopefully it's not a big problem.
Yeah. I think it's an electric, right?
Yep.
So I think the thing with the electrics that I always worry about is not actually the pitches that come from it, but the sound of the keys. I find that tends to travel more than the sound.
Yeah, I have a couple of students who have really nice fingernails. I'm gonna have to tell them to
Oh no.
But they're at that age right now where they're just they really like their, I don't know what they are. They're fake. They're the ones that the gel. I get the gel ones or whatever.
Yeah.
The acrylics.
They change them every week, and I was like, where do you get this money? They're like, oh, they work and then they change them. I was like, oh, you know what? You're young. In 10 years, your fingernails are gonna be gone.
It hurts so bad when you do it because it's awful. And my nails aren't super thick. It hurts. It when they bake the nail onto your finger, it burns.
Because it's ultraviolet, right? It's UV.
Ultraviolet.
Yeah.
They put it on and then they have to heat it, and I actually felt it all the way in my nail bed. And they to get rid of it, you have to stick your fingers in acetone because it's baked onto your nail. So they have to they have to use that grinder and grind it off. If that's what they're using, the acrylics. It's awful. It's so bad for your hands.
I'm out.
Yeah, I was just like, you know what? 2020 will be the next decade where we, dismantle the patriarchy even further. No fingernails unless you really like them. No, I just they love them. They just but it just click like crazy even on the piano before. So now I'm really worried. So I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Bless you. Yeah.
Okay.
But, we should jump into this book. So this book is Karen's pick, and sounds like Titanic. I think this is the first. It's a memoir, right? It's not an autobiography. It's a memoir, right?
Yes.
It's a memoir. Yeah.
Right.
It's just focusing on one particular part of her life.
Yeah.
Because I think this is the first memoir I've ever read, and it was so much fun. I guess I'll go first. This was so much fun, not only because it was funny. I I love the fact that like when she was writing it, like, obviously she's writing it back, and now from like a hindsight thing, she's like, oh, that was silly, that was hilarious. At the same time, she was dealing with a lot of mental illness issues, and a lot of it resonated with me. Like a lot of the things that she pinpointed, like the whole like her dream of like the American dream where anyone can make it, but if anyone can make it, why are there prodigies? Right? Like I kind of think so. I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. I hadn't put those two concepts together before, and that really, but like I was like kind of like just reading through this. I was like, this is amazing. I wish this was one of the books that we had to read in college, right? Like a reading assignment would have been so great, like Musicianship 170 or something like that. If they had assigned this would have been amazing to read, because like it's so poignant, right? Because so many people, even in college in music, struggle through music, right? And stuff like that.
Well, and I think the biggest lesson from it was someone feeding on the desperation of students to get a job in the music industry.
Yeah.
And, you know, feeling so defeated, you'll take any job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the desperation coming out of not knowing how competitive it actually is. Because even me going into music and thinking, oh my God, placements. There's like 14 of us in our faculty, and there's 4 spots. And if you don't get in, what are the other 10 going to do, or something like that?
Yeah.
So just even just that, and then just the amount of time you spend trying to get into that top 2 or 3 or 4, and then thinking, well, if I don't get in, what else could I possibly do? Or how did I not do enough to get into that top chunk? Versus those prodigies that already naturally can play well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as musicians, we have this tendency to push ourselves. And so, you know, it's not necessarily out of competition. There is a competition there, but it's not necessarily that. It's more like I can be better. I'm going to be the best. I'm working on my goal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I assume that everyone liked this book?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but I liked it. It wasn't a loser.
Yeah. I mean, that I think that one was tough.
He brings that up every time.
Sorry. That's okay. That's our gauge, right?
But, you know, having said that, that is interesting, because that book, The Loser, also talks about inadequacy, right?
Yeah.
Right, with like the friends, right? And so like there is that kind of like there is at least the through line is very similar. The plot is very similar there. So there is that. But yes, it is not The Loser.
See, I think I really attached myself to this story, and I think it was just, you know, like right place, right time. It was funny. It was short. I read it in like 3 days or something. Like it was just like I whipped through it, and I had fun researching things. Like, oh, I'm gonna look up who the composer is, and then listening to his music.
Sorry, I think in some ways, arguably, this is the most like modern one. It doesn't take us back to, like, I'm not thinking way back when Napster started. I'm not thinking like 1800s Vienna and vampires, or way back. This is like right now. This is what has
this
happened.
is like what this is like less than 20 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe.
Yeah. So it's like the easiest one to kind of like wrap my head around settings and places and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Well, and she even puts it in time. I mean, she goes over the whole 9/11, and you know, everybody remembers where they were, but it's like, okay, but I can easily, because we went to university in like mid 2000 or the
3/5.
And so we still have that same flavor feel. We could have easily been that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a heavy relation there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so my first question about this is, does anyone have any idea kind of how you guys want to like talk about the book? Because this is like there is a storyline, but there's 2 storylines, right? It's her growing up to learn violin, and then her going through college and struggling until like she finally lands a job like as a secretary and stuff like that. So like I guess in terms of like there's no plot, right? It's just a timeline, right?
Yeah,
like,
it's her experience being in music.
Yeah. Did you guys want to maybe?
It's like as a musician.
I'd say like before the composer and then after the composer.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
Like two big chunks.
Yeah, let's do that. Like, so why don't we start with her childhood first? Okay. So like she's from like the Appalachia, right? Tiny little town, right? And I think what really drew me to her was that like her first exposure to music, that was like, I want to do this. I really want to play this. Like, and like the dedication that like her parents had driving her to the next town.
Yeah.
Right?
Like with 3 hours in like the snow.
Yeah. And just like it was really interesting because I mean Victoria's not a small town, right? So like I didn't really truly understand that, but like I was thinking back on like just like all three of us, like the sacrifices our parents made for us to have lessons and things like that, right? It was like, oh, that really kind of like made me feel like, oh, that was really cool. And at the same time, what was really nice was that she did put a lot of perspective from her parents into her story as well. How she mentioned that they did struggle, right? Yeah. That it wasn't just like from her perspective, like it was all like rosy and whatever. That like her parents did make good money, but right, there was always issues because like she had siblings, right? And her mom was not always free, and like, you know, like it would take them 12 hours to get there and back and stuff, and crazy things like that. But for her, in the book, she says like those were like the most memorable times, because that was the most amount of time she spent with her parents, was that drive, right? Because most of the time they were just away doing other things and working.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But, no, it brings back memories. Like my parents never traveled that far. Like when we lived in Langley, my piano teacher was in Abbotsford, so it's about a half an hour. I didn't realize this at the time, but they had back to back my lesson with a theory lesson. So it's like 2 solid hours of like straight up piano on a Monday afternoon. And Mondays were like the only days that my parents had off from the restaurant. So doing that and then realizing later that if they weren't shopping for like groceries, mom like slept in the car outside my teacher's studio while I was like getting my lessons, because I would come out and have to knock on the door and wake her up and then she'd drive me home. And that was like in my later years where like, and that's the kind of stuff they did to put me through like piano for however many years I did piano for. So it's kind of crazy to think that, you know, your parents were willing to do that kind of stuff for you when you find something that you truly want to do. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I think there were 2 instances, like, so she mentioned there was 2 performances, right? One when she was 8 and one when she was like graduating high school. I can't remember, but in high school, right? So the first time she played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then the second time she played Preludium and Allegro. So it was interesting because she was 8 the first time she performed, and she clearly remembered her being like, I am really good.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going to play, right? And she's like, because she was that confident person on stage, no one doubted that she could play. Like to the point where people thought she was playing from a recording, and she was like, oh, that's ironic that I am now playing from a recording. Yeah. Back when it was real. So I was like, oh, that's really cool, because like even at 8, I was already doubting myself. Like I think like it was like once I hit 6 was when I realized, oh, like I was becoming self-conscious. But like at 8, she was just like, nope, I'm the best. And I thought that was like really cool. And then to have a time jump to when she played the Preludium and Allegro. First of all, that's not an easy piece. That's a really difficult piece. And for her to be able, like, because she had mentioned her performance, she only like really described it in like very like minute detail, but she's like, oh, she flubbed some arpeggios here and then like played a wrong note here. I was like, but that's what everyone does in that piece.
Yeah.
And like for her to be able to play that meant that she was at least competent on the violin. Not anyone can play that. It was a really difficult piece. So like from like thinking about at the very beginning, she doesn't really talk about her education, but she gets into music, right? To be like, oh, she was actually good. Like in our standards, like if you were to just pick her up from the conservatory, like she would be in the top like 20% of students, right? She was proficient in the violin. It wasn't that she was bad, right? And then like kind of like, oh, okay, from there you realize, oh, she realizes that she's good but not good enough. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I related quite heavily to this because I grew up in the small town, and there were, like 2 other people in the same grade as me, and so the 3 of us always played together, and I was always the best. And so then when you're coming with that mindset, you're like, oh, I'm the best. I'm the best in the town. I'm really good. But then you go to university and you realize, oh, everybody else is the best in their town. So now we have the cream of the crop, and then it's like, that's when you get the decline and the, like, I felt a lot like her, where it was, I'm good, but I know I'm not as good as others.
And it didn't help that all the people in the small town were like, you're amazing, you're so great, you're gonna be a musician, you're gonna do this. So it's not like a false reality, but it's that whole, like, kind of see with those students that they're always consistently told that they're good, so they don't know how to deal with when they're not as good as they think they might be.
Yeah, it becomes your identity and your narrative, and you go, this is me, this is who I'm going to be, this is what I'm going to do. People tell me this is what I'm going to do. And then when you do that, it's not only devastating to you, but then you feel like, well, were they lying to me? Or
or you feel like they're
going to disappoint them?
Exactly. Like,
I think that's the main thing, is a disappointment, right? Because, like, I think they're not saying you're good out of any bad intentions, right? Like, growing up, all my family members were like, oh, you're amazing. They just didn't know better, right? And when you were younger, like, even if they did know better, right, like, they understand how fragile your confidence is at a young age, so they have to, like, oh my god, you're so amazing. And here's the thing about, like, older people, I find that, especially because, here's the thing, I don't like Prodigies, but the thing about Prodigies is that, like, because they're so good when they're young, right, older people just heap on the praise because they are amazing. At 7, they can play better than people who are in their 20s, right?
It inflates the ego.
Right. But then, but that's the thing. Most prodigies don't end up doing music because the curve is so steep for them from the very beginning. Most of them don't make it. Most of them just fall right off the cliff, right?
That was one of my points that I had written in there, because I remember having these conversations with people in university where you think how many hours and hours and hours you put in to get so good at this instrument, and then you graduate and you never touch your instrument again.
Because
so many people would say, I'm never going to pick up my trumpet again, I'm never going to play cello again. Like, can you imagine? I can't.
Well, because, like, there was that one of her friends, right, the cellist, who won the concerto competition, and then she played the concerto competition and then never touched her cello again. Right.
I will say I haven't played my sax in quite a while, but I do play piano, like, every day.
So you still have
my finger chops and everything, and I kind of go in between, like, teaching band. You just pick up your instruments and you play them, like, off and on. But it's not like I could not go back and do, like, the Glazunov again. Like, there's no way I could play that concerto again.
Yeah, I tried playing Ravel a couple of days ago, and my forearm was aching for 3 days. It's still hurting right now. Well, because I was just like, I can still do it. No.
Yeah. No, you can't. Muscle memory says yes, but your muscles say no.
I think one thing that was really profound for me for this book was I realized when I was going through college, I didn't really have a lot of empathy for people that was going through college, because I was always taught, if you're not good, you didn't work hard enough. You got to work harder, right? My parents were always like, practice more. And if you have, like, any time, practice, right? You just have to keep on practicing. And for me, my idea was always just, well, like, if I sucked at something, I didn't practice enough, so I'll just forgo sleep and practice more. And I think
no, I remember those nights of
but, like, then, like, realizing, like, you know, being a little bit older, quitting the performing world, and then having read this book, I realized, you know what, like, if I had just been taught to just be empathic or sympathetic just a little bit, I think we all could have been a very good community of support for each other, because we didn't have any support. Like everyone was just essentially like pitted, like Amanda said, right? You were just pitted against each other. There were limited spots and everyone wanted those spots, but no one told us, hey, you know what? If you don't get those spots, that's okay. You can still do this.
Yeah.
You can still do that. Like I can't really speak for you, like both of your experiences, but in my setting, it was just like, you have to get into performance. You have to do the concerto competition. You have to do the Strauss Foundation scholarship or whatever. And you have to do those, because if you're going to be a performer, those are the steps and those are the things that performers did. And if you didn't get them, you weren't good enough. Right? Right. And I just...
The traditional steps that you have to do in order to stand out from the crowd, right?
Yeah.
You know, piano players, dime a dozen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so how do you make yourself stand out compared to the 100 other piano players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then like when she went into college finally, right? First of all, she goes to a very expensive college, right? And like there was absolutely no way her parents would pay for it. Like, and I think that was really interesting, because I remember at that time, my parents also had an educational fund for the four of us. And had I used up that entire educational fund, I would have gone to UBC or U of T, because it would have paid for everything. But that fund was for all of my siblings, not just for me. So because of that, my choices were limited. And there was no way, like in my mind, I was like, well, I can't do 6 hours of school and 6 hours of practicing and then work. Like there's just not enough time. So like UVic was the only option I had, right? So like when she was talking about that portion of college with her parents, that really resonated with me, because I had that same conversation with my parents. And I was like, why can't you help? Like you could could you help more? And they were like, this is not fair for your siblings. Like they deserve a chance as well. So like the whole struggling to pay for school kind of like thing, I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because she did like, I think every single thing that I've read articles about, like, you know, she did the hormone like thing. She did like the drug testing, right? Like everything you could think of. And you're like, oh my God, like I thought this was something that you only read in like newspapers. No, this is real. Like she went through it all, right? And she somehow paid for everything, like, which is crazy, right? So
but to what
Which is horrifying.
Yeah, right. And I think that's the sad part, is that like if you're not that good, you're not going to get a full ride. You're not going to get the support. You're not going to get the grants, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of the times when it comes to grants and scholarships, especially in music, it's based off of merit, right? So if no prof is going to sponsor your name, you're not going to get anything.
It should be off of merit. It should be off of merit and need.
Need.
Because the other thing too, like she came from a middle class family, but a lot of musicians can come from wealthier families, and so like, why would they be in the same mix for a scholarship? Except maybe perhaps for the name of the scholarship to get that, and that's where you get kind of tricky, where it's like, are you going for the money or are you going for the prestige of getting that scholarship? And keep in mind, these are American colleges, which are like like
$50,000 a year. Yeah,
it's like
whereas UVic's like 10,000.
Yeah, it's like 3 times what ours is.
It's ridiculous.
And I thought ours was expensive until I started reading. I'm like, oh my God. Who actually afford going to college in the United States?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like,
so much debt.
Yeah. So like, you know that part where she was enrolled in the military for like a day? So in America, in order for you to get scholarships or loans, I believe you have to enroll in the military.
Wow.
I think a couple people in our music department, we're not going to say any names, but they were in the military. They were in the military band and they were getting scholarships.
They still are. There's at least 2 or 3 that I know that still like do stuff with cadets and stuff.
And that was like a job plus sponsor.
A job, but then you get careers in cadets or in the military, specifically with music.
Yeah.
So that kind of works for them too.
Which is also like when you're looking at your job options and you're like, okay, how do I get a job in music? Because people, you know, I don't know if you get this, Amanda, does drive me nuts just a little bit when I'm like, oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, what do you teach? Music. Good for you for doing something you love.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And that's this like condescending way that you're just like, okay, but like.
Yeah. But a lot of people, and this is the thing with music, is that like it's one of those subjects where if you don't know somebody in it, or you're not in it yourself, you don't actually understand how much work it takes to actually be a musician. I've had parents come to me and they're like, oh, it's just music. And I'm like, I dislike you so much right now. It is not just music. This is literally like 30 years of my life I've dedicated to this. But yes, it's totally just music. And it's interesting because even my husband, like when we started dating, he doesn't have anybody necessarily that does music. So him watching me like practice like Christmas songs from beginning to end for the Christmas concert every year, and like score studying, and like literally sitting at Long and McQuaid for like 3 hours trying to pick correct like good band music
in August.
No, not even in August. I went in June last year, and I just sat there on a weekend.
Yeah.
And I have to go by myself because he's like, I don't know what to do for 3 hours, and I just sit there like listening to this thing on J.W. Pepper, reading through the scores, and like trying to pick something. So in that kind of sense, like the people that make it look easy both make it a benefit but also hurt the craft a little bit, because they're like, oh, I can just pick up this instrument and I can totally just play it quickly.
So the thing that I've always found the toughest to explain to people, we usually only see the final performance.
Yeah.
The final performance is polished and wonderful, and the person comes in and easily they just sit down and it just looks like it's smooth, like butter, right? But you don't see the 70 plus hours of the person in the music room by themselves practicing and memorizing and like not sleeping because you can't get that one part, and practicing over and over and over and getting frustrated and throwing things against the wall and like just saying, fine, I quit. And you know, like you don't see that. You see this final polished, like, oh wow, they're so talented. They just effortlessly do it.
Like, and we're spending days on like 10 bars and be like, I just cannot get this run for the life of me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, so we don't see that.
Yeah. Well, and what that, okay, I want to bring it back to like one section in the book. She, with the Preludium and Allegro, she specifically said it took her 6 years. She wanted to play it 6 years before she actually performed it. It took her 6 years to learn that piece. But she was dedicated for 6 whole years, and she got one performance out of it, right? Like, if that's not dedication, and that's not like, hey, this is how long it takes, right? Like, and just to think, like, even some of the students that we all teach, right? Some of them have like, oh, I want to play this one day. And you're like, be patient. It might take years, but if you still want to do it in 5 years and you're still here, you're gonna do it, right? But it's just like, just thinking like, just the power that music has to help people and teach people long-term strategy, problem solving, and looking at things beyond just a week, right? Months, years, right? And like the culmination of like how, like I sometimes tell my students, like, when you come to my studio and you learn from me, you get my 25 years of experience condensed into the 5 years you're gonna be with me. All the tricks that I had to struggle to learn, all the all the formulas that I found out, all the best ways of practicing, you get it instantaneously. But you yourself have to be patient. Just because you're getting 25 years of education in 5, you still need to be here present for those 5. Because if you're not, I can teach you everything, but you're not gonna get it, right? And the parents don't understand that. They're always like, how come they're not as good as so-and-so yet? How come so-and-so is doing this, right? And it's like, well, each child is different. Their trajectory is different. Some people come with better skills. Some people are just, unfortunately, financially better off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some
No,
people are better at internal rhythms. Some people are better at the musicality. Some people are better at being precise. Some people are better at, you know, the passion, but they can't play the straightforward. Like, we come with our own skill set.
Yeah. And the hard thing with that is that sometimes the kids will, it's not even just the parents, but the kids take it upon themselves. And I've had kids who are like, I'm trying, Miss Chan, I can't play as good as so-and-so. And I'm like, well, the thing is, you can't, because this kid gets private lessons and you don't. So you can't compare yourself to other kids. Like, this kid literally has an hour every week that they just sit and work with like a musician to help you on these tiny little things. And you don't get that. And that's okay. You just do the best that you can. If you are improving by yourself, awesome. That's all I want. But this age of like, now that my students as band kids, grade 6s and 7s, they're always comparing themselves to each other. And it's a really hard habit to break, where I'm like, you yourself should be improving, but if you're not as good as so-and-so, that's okay. So-and-so.
It doesn't mean you're inadequate. It means you're on a different stage in the path. You may have taken a different path. You're all going to the same destination.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of brings you back to when you were that age, because at one point we all compared ourselves to someone or something, right? We all did, whether it was music or something else, like it was looks, right? Or the way that you were, like, you know, the car that your parents drove versus other people's cars, the fact that you got dropped off rather than having to walk to school, like, you know, those kind of things. And it's like, wow, like it's so poignant that we have to be careful as music educators, like how we try to be fair to everyone and treat everyone equally. Because I think, like, especially for her in this book, right? Like you guys were mentioning, like she was very sheltered, but it wasn't her fault she was sheltered. She was like the only violin student in her entire town. So by default, she was already going to be better than everyone who even tried, right? But then, like, upon her first year into college, she realizes she can't do this. And then she falls in love with something else.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was really cool because, like, I can remember a handful of people that first started with me in music and then just drifted off to something else. And at that time, I was a douchebag and I was like, oh, they didn't have what it takes to stay. They didn't have what it takes. But I realized now, it's like, no, it's not that it's not that they didn't have what it takes to stay. They realized that staying was going to be dangerous for their mental health.
Yeah.
And
they found something else
that they loved,
gave them the passion that they were maybe for them music was this fun thing, but they couldn't ever turn it into a job. It just wasn't for them. So maybe they find, just like this the author does, Jessica, she finds something that she really is good at. The violin is like it's on the side, but then she gets into the Middle East and it's like, oh,
I want to be a reporter.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was really cool. I think it was really sad, unfortunately, that like she brings up a lot of things that we learned about how, like, when you're in a situation where your country is in conflict, they only want to hear one side of the story. One particular side of the story. They don't want people who are educated, who like are going to be in ground zero talking about everything, right? Like, because she struggled to get anything and she was willing to do it for free. But they're like, no one's gonna read this. They want sensationalists, like titles and everything, and they want, like, the American people want to hear a certain thing, and that is that they're the enemy and we're the conquerors, we're the victors and stuff. And it was so cool, like having someone, like, you know, kind of put it all down on paper. Like, even though, like, she's like, even though I love this, I struggled, and even though it was, you know, journalism, like even in music, people love music, but they struggle with it because it's hard to find jobs. It's hard to find anything, right, that you can like make a living off of. So it's like, I was like, wow, this is so poignant. So while she was doing the whole Middle East thing, she started playing those gigs. Now, I started doing a little bit of like research in it, but I definitely remember reading articles about this entire shenanigan.
Oh, I don't remember this at all.
I remember. I definitely, I read 2 or 3 articles. I was like, what is going on here? Because when she got to up until like the China tour, I didn't know who it was. But then they got to the China tour, and I specifically remember reading an article about that incident. Oh. And I was like, oh, this is who she is. But before you even get there, so the premise of the whole thing for people who are watching, first of all, there is this composer, and she's very kind, right? Just not name dropping anything, who essentially writes
him as
the composer.
The whole time.
Yeah, and essentially this composer writes what we call atmospheric music, or environmental music, and in which case it's like there is kind of like, imagine like the theme to Braveheart, Enya, Titanic, that type of music, where it's really pretty. Yeah, it's very pretty. There is a certain function to it, but he sells it as classical. Yeah. But he sells it as live performance classical. So this is the thing. So it's not that people hate the music. The music has a function. Just like, when you're at the gym, you don't want to be listening to Tchaikovsky. You want to listen to like Britney Spears' Work Bitch, There is a certain thing. So the music that he creates fits a certain genre. The problem is, the biggest issue was he was trying to sell it as if it was live performance. And that was the main reason why in China he got in trouble for it, because they knew right away that it was not live performance, right? But so they're selling these CDs, and she gets kind of called into this kind of ring of people, and it's just random groups that come together on different weekends, and they just go to like malls and like promenade malls, and then they just sell CDs and stuff like that. And I think the cool thing was her inner struggle with her identity as a real musician, but not playing music, with the fact that she was being told that she was really, really good, and therefore making money, therefore being a real musician.
But is she?
Fascinating.
Yeah. And it's the thing I love about this whole story is you read the premise and you're like, how do people not know?
Yeah.
Sound is a recording coming from the speakers, and that the musicians are not actually playing. And my favorite part, I could not stop laughing, was the part where she's describing one of these performances, and he was like continually saying, smile, you have to smile, pretend like you're enjoying it. There's people in the audience who have cancer, they're dying, make them feel happy. And she referred to his smile as the Velociraptor smile.
Yes.
Because it was like,
oh yeah, too much.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I did find the composer, and I found the shows. I think I sent them to you guys, and you watch them. And I mean, the other musicians, they're trying to be pleasant, right? They're like,
yeah, but his smile,
but he's like,
yeah.
It's terrifying. Yeah. And I could not stop laughing, because I'm like, what do we do? I mean, we're concentrating, so we don't smile.
You smile.
I've never
seen a string player smile when they play.
Yeah. I mean,
or like a cheeky smile, like, oh, I know I played.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. So the facial expression. So first of all, like, I was always taught, your music should speak for itself.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you do here or what you do here. If your body is doing something, that's actually a distraction from the actual music experience itself.
Yeah.
So there are people, like, for example, like Victor Borge, right, who are just they're comedians, right? They're comedians on stage, and they do it because it's like, oh, taking some time here, right? And it brings out an extra layer of experience for the audience, but it should only be used if it's added layers of experience, rather than just like, oh, smile. Because like, at one point she was like, wait, she's telling the flautist to smile, Does he not know? Oh, he actually doesn't know how the flute is being played. Like, he actually does not know. Like,
yeah, that was my thing with it. I'm like, so he's telling everybody to smile. This only works if you don't use your mouth to play.
Yeah, because if you think about like a violinist, right? Like this.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like that. And it hurts because if you try like pinching your shoulder like this and smiling, it puts all this pressure here.
Right. Yeah.
Terrible.
Well, it's tension, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's tension, and that's the one thing that we're told. Like, relax, relax, relax. No tension, otherwise you're gonna get muscles like hurt, whatever. That's
stuff. Yeah.
And throughout all of this, it wasn't like any of the like all the musicians were like really bad. Some of them were actually studying in high-end music schools, and they just needed to make money because they needed to like make ends meet. So it was like a plethora. Like, so like we're led to believe in her book that she was the worst. I'm sure she wasn't the worst musician, but there were people who studied in like Moscow Conservatory, Manhattan School of Music, Juilliard, right? Like people who just needed to make money and needed to pay for their bills, right? Yeah. And like even the very first time when she saw, I can't remember the flautist's name. It was Yevgeny, which was the other violinist, right? And then the really tall, like model-esque blonde flautist. Like she saw them playing, and yes, I think so. And like she thought they were actually playing when she first met them, right? And then she realized it's actually like a recording because she had to just jump in and pretend, and she couldn't pretend, but she realized it don't matter. As long as there's a sound being made and she's moving, no one, like the vast majority of people wouldn't know.
But that's what we tell our students. Like, if you make a mistake, who's gonna know? You will, I will, but all your parents and all the people listening to you, they have no idea. So make your mistake and
you pretend like it was supposed to be like that.
Exactly.
Except so we remember that some of their performances were like 4 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no person could play that in their like playing position.
Yeah,
that whole time. No, no, thank you.
Well, 4 hours long, and she only got paid like $125 for that gig, I think, and she was in stilettos, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh,
can't even think that's horrible.
Yeah, and there was that one time, like close to the end of the book, where her E string breaks.
Yeah,
and she's like, oh shoot, and she instinctively tries to take it out and replace it, right? And he cuts the music and like yells at her, like, you can't stop playing her music. And really solidifying the fact that he really has no idea what's going on. I mean, at the very beginning, she hints at like they were playing Beethoven's Fifth, and he's like, who's this by?
Yeah,
because he didn't even know who it was by. So like from the get-go, you're like, okay, this person obviously maybe has a talent for creating music, but doesn't really have the history and the knowledge. Yeah, right.
Was when she was talking about how when they were on the tour bus and he just sat in his back room with his little keyboard, plunking away these melodies that essentially sound the same. And he's like, I made a new song. And then he just kind of plays it through. So he composes his like new CDs, right? Mm-hmm. On that little Casio, I think.
Well, he doesn't play those instruments. He would do the melody on the little Casio and then have people transcribe it so that it could be played by musicians, which is a legitimate way to compose, because a lot of composers are not proficient at every single instrument. So they play it out on the piano, and that's fine.
But not knowing the instrument, because I remember I think it was you, Poon, who like looked at stuff, and you look at the orchestral excerpt for something, and he's like, who writes like this? For stuff like, who writes orchestral condensations that look like this? Like, I don't have 16 fingers. I can't do all these notes at one time.
Oh my god!
Like, not knowing that, right? Like not knowing. And I remember being in Wind Symphony once, and I believe it was I think it was like a tuba or a lower brass, and they're like, this note doesn't exist on our instrument, but it's there because they have written it on some kind of program, and they're like, I was expected to play this. I can't play this because there's like 6 ledger lines. This is for a different instrument, like stuff like that. And that kind of reminded me of like all those times in classes where I'm like, this doesn't work. Like saxophones don't play G under C. That note literally doesn't exist unless you put like a boot in the bell.
Yeah. So when you're playing on your little Casio keyboard with the saxophone sound and you're like, oh, it sounds so cool, you're not recognizing the actual
limitations of the instrument.
Yeah, the limitations of the voicing.
Yeah. But it brings up a good point because the music aside, the creation of the music kind of went hand in hand with how he named it, in the sense that it was like they would just create a piece of music and just randomly name it, and that would speak to people whether or not that was the original intention. And she brought up Appalachian Spring by Copeland.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because up until reading that chapter, I had no idea that name was actually like subtitle, like it was put on top afterwards. It was first of all, it was like he had a completely different name. It was written for someone, and then she was like, "Oh, we should name it this instead." And Appalachian Spring is the spring river, like the running water, not the season. But people from Appalachia, every single spring, they think of that song. And it's permeated their culture. And I was like, that is so interesting, because even with like I don't want to say real composers, like classical composers, even their music, like if you think about the nicknames that we have for pieces, a lot of them they weren't given to those ones. Like the composer didn't give those nicknames, we did, and they now are synonymous with certain feelings, right?
Yeah. Well, and so what this composer did is he essentially would find a title that would basically say, feel this way.
Yeah.
Calm sunrise. Oh, well, I'm supposed to be calm.
Yeah.
You know,
peaceful
like
river.
Soaring eagle. You're like, I'm free. You know, like he literally was like, here's a title, here's how you feel like. And I think at their concerts, like the bigger concerts, they would project images.
Yeah. There was a soaring eagle one.
Yeah. Just nail and how you should be feeling.
Yep. Here it is. Here's how to feel.
Well, and the funny thing is, I remember one of my professors complaining about this whole like mixed media performance experience, and how he's like, wait, why do we need a picture of waterfalls while you're listening to music? Like, use your imagination. Right. And it was like an open group discussion, and it was really interesting because at that time I was like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. You know, everyone should understand. But most people don't. Right. Like, unless they understand running water motives or whatever like that, it's free for them to interpret that music however they want.
Yeah.
And sometimes a picture or like some type of like video or whatever, a graphic, helps you solidify what you're supposed to be listening to.
Yeah.
Right.
However, in teaching listening, the one thing that I always get is I'll describe the piece, or I get the kids to listen to it and they describe it themselves. They always ask, can we watch the video? Because we're so visual, they used to think that music only exists with the visual. There's no way to separate the two.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, I need it to tell me how I feel.
Yeah.
So I've done exercises where I just play the music to a video. Like it is like a Pixar short or something, but I'll play the music and I'll say, what do you think this short is about?
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing, because like I find that, because I do that with my really younger ones.
Yeah.
And the stuff that they think of is, I don't want to say like wrong, because there really is no wrong answer, but you'll play them something that could be like soft and soothing and quiet. And they're like, I think of T-Rexes fighting in the jungle. And you're like, how in God's name did that happen? Yeah. So
they're not actually thinking about the music. They're just thinking about something, or they're trying to tell you what they think you want them to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird hand-in-hand thing, but it does come into this age of like that era of like, here's what you should do. And this was kind of like my beef with graphic novels as well. That whole creativity thing is, I tell kids, like, I don't want to be told what to think when I read a book. Sometimes I do, but when I read a book, I want to make the character come alive for myself, and that usually gets them into. But that's kind of
it's a laziness in imagination.
It's a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and it's really prominent now too. Like I don't know if you guys have watched. I'm about to take a crap on something that I really hate. But Rise of Skywalker, I hated that movie so much. I hated it so much. It was essentially 3 hours of someone holding my hand, telling me what's happening and how to respond. And it was just back and forth things. It was so quickly, like things were changing so quickly and scenes were changing so quickly. I did not have any feelings for anything. So when people passed on or things were destroyed, I didn't care because they didn't develop.
Yeah. They didn't develop it. They didn't let you process it. They didn't sit in that moment and let it just milk it out. Like
but that's the thing about like this whole like you're saying like lack of creativity, right? Is that we live in we live in a world where we have these things for children now. Yeah. And they're saying because they have access to video games and apps, they themselves do not know how to just draw a monster. Yeah. Right? Because they don't have that. Like, or just like, you know, like whenever I talk to like students, like a lot of my students are now we're working on arrangements of pieces that they like. They have no idea where to start. Like they don't like they'll try something, but they themselves don't understand what sounds good in their ear and what sounds good in like a general like classical context, even though they have the education, because they've never been taught creativity. Yeah. Because they've had instant stimulus because of this, right? And because of that, you can see it even like when they're trying to pick chords, right? I was like, okay, so here's a formula. This is Baroque counterpoint. It has to go to a 5-1, 4-1, something to 5, or a disepticators of some sort. But they don't understand. They understand that part, but they don't understand how to get there. Yeah, because they can't hear it. They've never had to experience any of that stuff before. And I'm finding that because of their struggle with that in school and maybe even in their personal lives, it affects how creative or how open-minded they are, especially. Like for some of them, like I have 6 kids who are doing history, but they were doing harmony before. Each 6 of them have a different style of music that they like. Each 6 of them hate the other 5.
Really?
Yep.
So they just stick with the one and that's it?
Well, like one of them only listened to like indie and only indie like from like a certain like time period and only female vocals.
Wow, that's really specific.
They do not like anything else. One person really loves pop. They're in like an Ariana Grande phase right now. And everyone else is like, no, not happening, right? And it's just so interesting because they're so adamant about what they like and do not like, but they've never had to question. It's like, can you like something else? You're allowed to like something else, right?
Or why do you like that?
Yeah.
What about it do you like? Not just I like this. What quality?
But they can't ask that question. Because I've asked that question. I'm like, so what is it about this that you like? I don't know. Sounds nice. Okay. Let's get a little bit deeper than it sounds nice and I like it. What about it do you like? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I've always had like these little mini projects where I'm like, describe the picture in your head or describe what you like about it. Well, it's cool. No. What else? Like, give me something specific. Do you like that the singer...
Talk about the music. Do you like how fast it is? How slow it is? Do you like that it's loud? Do you like that it's... long stretched out notes.
But the ability to do that is completely lost. So right now I'm doing a project with my kids that is a take on 12-tone music where they just do an 8-tone composition. Their 8-tone is laid out for them. You have 8 tones, you're good to go. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't give them that, they'd be like, I don't know how to do this. 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 Like everything is so scaffolded that it's almost like I'm basically writing it for them.
Yeah. But that's why like the composer's music is so easy to understand. Yeah. Because if it says rainfall in April, you think the month of April or the person April, and you think of water, and that's all like the imagery is already there. It's superimposed, so you don't have to think about what it is. You already have an answer to that, right?
Okay, and the title of the book, Sounds Like Titanic, was he basically cached on the fact that everybody had really warm feelings and lovely feelings and sad, like they had emotions attached with the movie.
Yeah.
And so if he made it sound similar to the movie, he was essentially piggybacking on the emotion and sort of just like, oh, you like the penny whistle?
Yeah. Specifically that instrument too.
Penny whistle, beautiful soaring melodies, and people are like, oh my goodness, it sounds like Titanic.
And there was that one part where they were playing for like a live like PBS thing, right?
Yep.
And she was playing and she could see the screen of people calling in to buy CDs. So as the music got more intense, more CDs were bought.
Yeah.
And as it dipped down, less CDs were bought. So I was like, wow, like not only, is it like, oh, you're playing on people's emotions, that imagery right there, specifically, you're drawing on people's emotions to buy things. And that was such it was so black and white for me. I was like, wow, that's so crazy.
So that's kind of what companies are doing now, right? They're like, oh, hey, let's bring back the movies that you love, the nostalgia, Stranger Things. Hey, let's set it in the 80s because all the people watching it grew up in the 80s. We're tapping on those emotional strings, therefore they're going to love it.
Yeah. But arguably with a composer, he also lucked out, in my opinion. He lucked out a lot because if he had done this in any other time period other than surrounding that 9/11 period of time in history, I don't feel he would have been anywhere near as successful because he's written these, like we said, like the feel good kind of songs. Like, oh, like you said, I don't have to think. This is just a pretty piece of music. And then all these people who are like, your music has helped me through such a tough time. My husband or brother or whatever has been lost in 9/11. So in a way, he was really lucky to be right before, right after 9/11 because that was a time that everybody needed something to
positive.
Yeah, that was positive. That was nice. That made them feel good. So during this time, he hit like the jackpot of time of the era to actually do something like this.
Emotional vulnerability.
Yeah, emotional vulnerability.
Well, and also like,
but he didn't see it like that, right? He saw it as I'm making people, giving them hope and the feel. He loved it. Like he would stay with people afterward and he would see every single person and he would talk to them and hear their stories. Like it feels like he would do it robotically, but he actually like really truly wanted to help. So there's this weird complexity.
Yeah. And I was gonna say like I was gonna add to that too. Like so like I never questioned his generosity. Yeah. Because a lot of the stuff that he did benefited a lot of charities, right? Yeah. I never once doubted the fact that he cared because he did. He really did care. Okay. And I think like it was the timing, like what Amanda said, it was the situation and the fact that he was doing something that was good for humanity. Yeah. That like if you were to criticize it, you would be a monster. Right. Yeah. If you were like, he's not playing real music and people are like, yeah, but he's raising money to help people. What are you doing? Yeah. Right. So at that time, it would have been like, yes, you're right. Like right now, if someone did that, immediate criticism. But the fact that it was just so situational and he was doing good. Right. It sucked that like the author had like a mental breakdown because of it. Yeah. But what he was doing was good. Like obviously he wasn't a people person. Right. And he didn't really understand how to take care of people, right? The people that are immediately surrounding him. But he truly believed in smiling because that would help people. He truly believed that his music would help people. Right. And for that, I was like, you know what? I can't hate the composer. No. I can be frustrated with the situation like that he put on people and put on his employees, but I can't hate him.
His intentions are always good, but I kind of akin it to that student who just wants the end product and they miss out the entire middle chunk. So like he's like, in the end, this is all I want. I want people to be happy. I want people to feel good. I want to donate. I want to be generous. But there's all that stuff in the middle that he just kind of bypasses because his one goal is that end goal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I guess like because we went to music school and we do all that stuff like orchestration, we learned about writing, we learned about voicing, we learned all of that kind of stuff. In a way, like it cheesed me off that he's like seriously, he's just kind of like pretending to play like this is blasphemous when it's live music, it's live music, it's not recording. At the same time, you're right, you can't really fault him. He just wants to make people feel good and feel happy in a time where it's sad.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he developed actual music composing abilities other than just tapping it out, he would have been bigger and continued to be bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
But I think like I think, I mean, it's interesting because we are reading this book from a musician's perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
If people actually end up reading this because we've talked about this, I think something you have to keep in mind is he does have social disabilities. There is something there. He is just awkward. It might be like slightly autistic or whatever, but there's something there that doesn't allow him to be social. Because I feel like he tried. Through the entire book, he did try. Yeah. But he didn't like understand how to read a room, didn't understand social norms. All he knew was he could write music well.
Yeah.
And that was one thing he could do very well. And it just so happened that he could use this for the good of humanity. And that was the thing that was driving him, right? And unfortunately, like, it just meant that like maybe him having an agent or a manager would have helped him a lot, because he wasn't really good at, everything else. But those two things he was good at.
Well, he had that one woman that was kind of like a manager, but I think she mostly just like picked the people and put them in the groups and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and then like the driver was like a fan who didn't get paid, right? Who was drinking the Kool-Aid.
He drove all over the United States for free because he was a fan, and he had his little jacket. Yeah. That I can't forget that he always has to wear his jacket.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
I mean, the composer is still writing music.
Yeah.
He is. Yeah.
He'll release his music on his YouTube page.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So
if all enjoy his warblings.
Mm-hmm.
Warblings?
Yeah. So if anyone ever wants to listen to what he's doing currently right now, it's all online. It's all online.
And
you can easily find out who it is.
Yeah, there's several articles about who the composer is online.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like, I know that like we've essentially gotten to the end of the book. She does get out of the cyclical like kind of like situation, right? She does leave in the end. And that one chapter I thought was really cool, because like she's like the last time she did a gig, she was already secure. She had a full-time job already. Yeah. And then he picked her up, and for that hour and a half or something like that they were in the car, he just spills his guts to her. Yeah. And she's like, and because that was the only truly human interaction I had with the composer, I will never out whatever he said to me. Yeah. That will always be private. And I think that was really cool.
That was the moment where he revealed himself to her. I mean, she had only seen him as the composer, and then in that moment he became a real person to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that she had, first of all, like, she had a big enough heart to just keep that secret, and to understand that it was said in confidence, because he just wanted to have friends, right? Yeah. He just really wanted to have friends. And that even at that moment, like, I know that like she had, like, the chapter was really short, and she was talking about like the interaction. He had the ability to read the room. He has that ability, right? He knew that this was going to be the last time that they were going to hang out together, and that's why he had to say everything, right? Yeah. And it was like, that was really cool, because like on the one hand, she was going through panic attacks, going to see counseling, all this stuff, trying to hold down like a job. Yeah. She can still see and give humanity to someone else in that situation. That was really cool to see. Yeah. Right. And it wasn't like the entire book, she just talked about how it was a bad experience for her. She never once shitted on the composer. Right?
See, that's the thing. I mean, she did kind of shit on him, but she wasn't. She was trying to give us a musician's, her perspective of who this person was. If anything, she described him very complexly. So she described how she felt about him when she was going through all this stuff. Like, he was this weird, he was awkward, he just didn't understand things. Like, this is what some outside people would term his music. But in the end, he's like any one of us, and here's all of his qualities that are positive, and you have to understand that.
Yeah. So I think that was a really cool, like, I mean, I don't even want to call it an olive branch. It was just her like humanizing this person, right? Being like you're right, like, this person is a person. They might be awkward at that time. They might have felt like they were cold and distant, but they probably didn't want that themselves, right?
Yeah.
And they just didn't know better, right?
Yeah. That puts into perspective some of the people we meet that are like super awkward. That you like, there's a colleague I have, and she's a little bit socially awkward. She is literally the nicest person you ever meet. Like, she's so amazing as a teacher. She's so good with her kids. She's a little scary when you first meet her, but like, that whole, like, some people need more than 2 seconds to be to somebody. Like, I would bet you the three of us are quite social. Like, we get along with, I would dare to say, most people. But knowing that not everybody can do that some people need like a month or two or even a year or something like that to kind of warm up to somebody.
Yeah.
And that it is difficult.
I always like to think that never, ever, ever go off of your first impressions of a person. Because usually they're just as nervous as you are.
Yeah.
If not more. And so if they're looking like a bit of a D-bag or a priss or whatever, it could be that they don't even realize that they're putting out that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you don't want to be the one to tell them.
Well, I mean, like I said before, like, reading this book has really helped me kind of give perspective to like how I conduct myself like around people. And I think that's why I really like this book. I was like, I came into it wanting to read about a musician's struggle through something, and came out of it being like, wow, I can learn to be a better person.
Yeah.
Like, having read her memoir, like, I was like, you know what? Like, I've been trying really hard to always give people like a second chance, and being like, well, you know what? If they're a douchebag, it's probably because I'm entering their personal space.
Yeah.
In a very dangerous way, and they don't like that.
Put their prickles up.
Yeah. Right. So I was like, oh, you know what? Like, this is another remander that I just like, don't judge a book by its cover. Don't assume that the person's a meanie because of that first meeting, right? Yeah. Just assume that, you know, if they're if you're as uncomfortable as you think you are, they're probably just the same, right? Just what Karen said. So I thought, like, that's why for me, I was like, oh, I really like this book, because it was like just like a book on just like how to be a better person, you know, take care of yourself, try to help other people, you know, be generous, right? Be human. Like, everyone is full, like, multifaceted, whether or not you had a good or bad experience with them, right?
Yeah, but also recognize too, like, she recognized his positive qualities. So it's like, okay, you might not agree with his lifestyle or him as a person, but you cannot argue with the fact that he wanted to make people feel better in a time where they were really struggling to feel better.
And that self-realization that sometimes you just need to stop. That like, there's one thing to be said about like, I'm determined. And I get that, because, you know, Asian family, you work and you work and you work. Eventually, like, if it's still not working, you need to have that self-reflection and be like, okay, this legitimately, I have to stop. It's not about like continually going and determining to finish it. I just need to stop this now.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting book.
Yeah, I've actually recommended it to a couple of my friends already. Like it's such like what Karen said. It's so easy to read, and you immediately jump into the story because you feel for her, right? And you're like, oh man, yeah.
Yeah. I've also recommended it to people, but not musicians. I recommended it because I said it's fascinating to read her experience, but also it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, I was cackling at some of the parts. I was just like, this book is so funny.
That one part where she does like a monologue to the audience where like her friends like, maybe you should talk about effing the composer. I'm not going to talk about effing the composer because it never happened. All right, you know what? All right, fine. Like at the end of the chapter, I'm just going to put the F word and the composer. Are you happy now? And I was like, this is so fun because like they're like, yeah, if you don't talk about like sexual stuff, it's not going to sell much. You're like, fine, this whole chapter is going to be talking about sexual stuff. F, the composer. There you go. Next.
Here you go. My book is sold.
Yeah, it was great.
Have you watched any interviews with her?
I have a couple queued up after this, so I'm going to watch them.
Yet. I don't actually remember when I finished the book.
That's okay. I finished in October, so
I definitely finished in December.
When you messaged me this morning, man, you're like, I don't remember anything about this book.
I read through my notes again. I did. I have a notebook specifically for notes.
Yeah.
And all the books that we read, I remember chunks of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I finished it in like probably like a month ago.
Yeah. No, I essentially like yesterday I spent like an hour. I would read like every 20 pages. Like I read the first. I was like, oh, okay, I remember this. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I have here that starts like many love the composer. I wrote that.
What does that mean?
Many love the composer.
I wrote the thesis that I really enjoyed, which was, while determining the difference between the real and the fake can be maddening and ultimately imperfect, it remains a worthy endeavor. And I really liked that because it's true. You're like, okay, is this real? Is it not? I mean, it's maddening and you just have to keep doing it. Right? It's still worthy.
Yeah.
I asterisked this, that thing that Poon was talking about where Appalachian Spring is popular in Appalachia, but like I asterisked this, sometimes people just want to be told what to feel because his music is loved by both the music snobs and like the country bumpkins. Just because you're happy when you listen to it.
Yep.
Exactly. And what's wrong with that?
And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
That's
the cool thing about music. You can love one thing and another person can love another thing, and it doesn't mean that music is less than that music.
Very true.
There's a YouTube video that goes like, it's okay to not like things, but don't be a dick about it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Learn, trying to be a better person every day, everyone.
I think I will that to a kid every day that I've started teaching.
Okay, so I think we've wrapped up. Do we have our next read?
Yeah. Okay. So I am in charge of picking the next read, and I've decided to pick the book Under the Visible Life by Kim Etchlin. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. It's either Etchlin or Etchlin. I don't know. But I'll read the what do you call this? Summary? Or the blurb on it. So, fatherless Catherine carries the stigma of her mixed race background through an era that is hostile to her and all she represents. It is only through music that she finds the freedom to temporarily escape and dream of a better life for herself, nurturing this hard-won refuge throughout the vagaries of unexpected motherhood and an absent husband, and relying on her talent to build a future for her family. Orphaned Masa also grows up in the shadow of loss sent to relatives in Pakistan after the death of her parents. Struggling to break free, she escapes to Montreal, leaving behind her first love, Kamal, but the threads of her past are not so easily severed, and she finds herself forced into an arranged marriage. For Masa, too, music becomes her solace and allows her to escape from her oppressive circumstances. When Catherine and Masa meet, they find in each other a kindred spirit as well as a musical equal, and their lives are changed irrevocably. Together, they inspire and support one another, fusing together their cultures, their joys, and their losses, just as they collaborate musically in the language of freeform, improvisational jazz. So that's essentially what's happening there.
Interesting. I'm already sad.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit sad.
This sounds a lot like the what was the one?
Do not say we have nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, probably
Okay.
we have nothing.
It sounds like a
but the freeform jazz kind of like throws it in a little bit of a different direction than that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So for those of you who live in Victoria, Russell Books does have like I think 2 or 3 copies of this. I don't think. I think the public library, the downtown location has one. I think.
Library has 4.
Yeah. So there you go.
I've already got it.
Yeah. So that was actually one of the like. I mean, I had we had chat about. I had 3 choices, but based off of those 3, this one was the most readily available for people to grab. So and it's easy to find. And I've heard some good things. Some of my friends have already read this, so I was like, okay. I'm interested, excited. So
okay, I'll get it out of Indigo soon.
Yeah, hopefully it's not too long of a read. I tried to keep it within the whole, like, was it 400 pages? That's our limit, right? I don't remember.
Yeah. Have you looked at that Excel document? There's a lot of nonfic on that Excel document.
Yeah, I was actually, Karen brought this up to me, so I think I'm going to start adding some of the stuff that I've been researching and putting on there as well. Because I've been specifically looking for fiction, but it's hard.
Yeah. I found a lot of nonfiction, and the reason why I found a lot of nonfiction was because it's so hard to find actual fiction that
you don't tear apart because they're not musicians.
You know, it's really funny. I was like, we went through our first 2 years, and I was like, oh no, I think we've read through all the fiction music books. We're done.
No,
we're done.
What's it called? Kron got one that something sonata. Oh no, double exposition.
Oh, like the romance books.
Oh, okay, but okay.
but the romance books is always like so and so is a guitar player in the band.
Yeah, the
band. It's always like rock music based. It's not it's not classical.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and you know what? I tried with was it Music in Silence?
Yeah.
Like I was like, I thought it was going to be a bodice ripper book. Okay, there was no ripping of any bodices.
No, but it was an unexpected delight.
It was. I very much enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
So.
And Karen's was it Mozart's Blood? I enjoyed Mozart's Blood too.
That was so much fun to read. That was so much fun to read. So I'm glad we're still we're still finding them once in a while, right? But I think in this case here, the original idea of the book club was to find fiction in music, but it is hard. So I think and we've read some really cool nonfiction like this book, and then when music got free.
Yeah,
right? That was also really fun. And then there was the piano store that Amanda chose. Right? Yeah. We've had some really fun nonfiction ones, right? Because they're told from a perspective of a person, and it's fun to read them. So in a case, it's you're still listening to a story, right? You're still following someone. So I think in that case, it's fine, it's great, and I learned so much. So
yeah, actually.
Yeah. All right, I think we should probably call it a day. Thank you everyone for watching. This was a really fun book. We'll tell you guys when we're meeting next. I don't know when, but we'll decide this offline and then I'll post about it. But anyways, have a good day everyone. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.